Most of the people within the mainstream gaming media absolutely hate our guts. They constantly attack us whenever they can, and they defend their own. And that's exactly what's happening because an anti-white and anti-gamer video game journo is running damage control for the Veilguard by claiming it's the target of a hate campaign. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, there are constantly stories like this where people are being called out for their really disgusting behavior, and now it just happens to be this video game journo who hates white people and who hates gamers. And what they're doing is they're trying to defend games like Assassin's Creed Shadows and Dragon Age the Veilguard by saying they're the target of a hate campaign, which certainly isn't the case. When we are talking about the internet, you need to have thick skin. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. If you are a developer who is behind a game that costs $100 million to create, behind a legendary studio like BioWare, and you've worked on it for a decade, you need to understand that not everybody is going to like your title. And we're not talking about an indie game that has a very small, close-knit community. There are going to be people who buy your game that love it and that hate it because you have such a large reach. And we are talking about an established franchise like Dragon Age. So you'd think these people would understand that you're never going to please everyone. You're going to, face backlash and harsh criticisms, but instead they always call it a hate campaign when that certainly isn't the case. It says Hayes Madston, who previously claimed that he can't stand white people, attempted to run damage control for BioWare in the Veilguard by claiming the game is the target of a hate campaign. We just saw the same thing happen a few weeks ago with, of course, Obsidian and Matt Hansen, who said that he wants to push crusty white dudes out of the video game industry. So legendary studios where they are either receiving, like this defense from the mainstream media who hates white people, or they have individuals who are a part of their studios who just admit to hating white people. Like, why is this racism okay? If we replace the word white with black, these individuals would lose their shit because, yeah, it's racist. But it's also racist to say the same thing about white people and to sit here and attack gamers and you're calling us terrible people is mind-boggling because the only reason why these developers and these journos have jobs is because of gamers, because we buy their products. So you'd think they'd have a little bit of respect for us, but they don't. I just don't get how such Marxist fucks infected gaming media like this. But it says in an article centered on an interview with the Dragon Age the Veilguard game director, Corinne Bush, published by woke publication Inverse, Matson claimed that the game is the target of a hate campaign that's put Veilguard at the center of a kind of culture war on social media, along with plenty of hateful comments towards developers and review bombing on sites like Metacritic. They never call out review bombing when it's positive review bombing, when there are people who leave positive reviews and they agree with those reviews going up. So I think that that's funny. And it's not just Veilguard that is at the center of the culture war or Gamergate too. There's tons of different games. So to hyper focus on this just proves that ultimately you simply wanted a new opportunity to attack gamers. And he does mention within this hit piece against gamers, titles like Assassin's Creed Shadows and Tales of Kenzera Zhao, though ultimately he talked to Corinne Bush, and Corinne Bush within this interview, I've got to be honest, didn't even really sit here and attack gamers, which I was a little bit shocked by. They just kind of were talking, and Inverse and Hayes here is the reason why there's now a controversy around this. If Hayes here didn't worry about pushing a fucking agenda in this piece if he simply talked to Corinne Bush and accurately represented their thoughts and opinions and didn't try to cause a controversy. There wouldn't be one around this. He wrote, for most of this year, Shadows has been the constant target of a hate campaign, with Ubisoft's art director recently condemning the backlash and harassment the studio and the team has faced. The creator of the indie game Tales of Kenzera Zhao, Abubakar Salim, has also been vocal about the fever pitch of racism the game and its team has received. But maybe if they stopped and thought about this for a minute, they would be able to understand why these games have received such harsh criticism and why the people behind them have as well. Abubakar Salim was somebody who was attacking content creators towards the beginning of the year, and he also had said, oh, you guys are completely wrong, our game's doing fine, our studio's doing fine, and he didn't want to have any genuine conversations with the very people he said were, his opposition, right? Like, I've tried to sit down and have a conversation with him. That hasn't panned out. People like Hypnotic have issued like public statements on X through his live streams and said, like, I understand we've had our differences in the past, but we could have a conversation on live stream. We, of course, have Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is a massive problem because of how they represented Yasuke as a full-blown samurai when he was more of a retainer. They've hired controversial historians like Thomas Lockley who have admitted they just wanted to profit off of this game's success and said, oh yeah, well, you might not like my books, but at least I'm making money. We have inaccurate architecture. We had the reenactment groups banners that were allegedly accidentally put into this game. I think that Ubisoft was hoping nobody was going to notice, but ultimately they removed them from the game, but not the art book, which is a massive controversy. We had the Torii Gate, the one-legged Torii Gate, I should specify, with Yasuke and Noe. We've just seen so much controversy surrounding this title, and we've been asking for an Assassin's Creed set in Japan for years, but this is the best they could give us. That's just unacceptable, at least in my opinion. But Dragon Age the Veilguard launched at the end of October, and its all-time peak, at least on Steam, was 89,418, which is pretty terrible for a game in an established franchise like Dragon Age. We're talking about EA, we're talking about BioWare, big names behind this project, and that's the best they could muster. And sure, as time goes on with single-player titles, player counts go down. It's now sitting at 8,754, which isn't good in the span of 2 months, though ultimately that is going to happen. But unsurprisingly, Hayes has a history of making it clear that he dislikes white people. He's said things like, boy, I can't stand white people. In June 2020, he reacted to PlayStation postponing a PS5 event, writing, cue all the mad white people, like, come on, this isn't important right now, and I'm saying this as someone whose entire career is steeped in video games. In April 2019, he posted, as much as I love Devil May Cry, I certainly don't need another game with a snarky white guy. Trisha and a lady are great characters that deserve far more than they've been given. He wrote in 2021 saying, it's not my job to recognize my white privilege on my massive platform. It's just about the most white privileged thing I have ever heard. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And sure, people are allowed to have their own opinions and voice them on their own social media. But on the flip side, that means we are allowed to criticize them and disagree with them. And I think that this racism is fucking disgusting. It is not okay to sit here and voice your hatred for white people. Maybe he's just a little bit mad at his own existence, but ultimately, if somebody replaced the word white with the word black here, they would be canceled, they would be kicked out of the video game industry, and they would be shunned forever more. But of course, that's not going to happen when it comes to voicing your hatred for white people because people in the mainstream industry think that this is acceptable behavior. And of course, it isn't at all whatsoever. So he's really just sitting here trying to run damage control for Dragon Age the Veilguard, for Assassin's Creed Shadows, for Tales of Kenzara Zhao, and it's not going to work. These are all controversial titles for good reason. Again, Veilguard was a really bad experience. Assassin's Creed Shadows has already been delayed, and there's a lot of controversy behind that with some of the choices that they've made. And when it comes to Tales of Kenzara Zhao, it's really just the attitude of Abubakar Salim and initially saying, oh, you guys are just haters, there's no problems with our game, the player numbers are good, it's exceeding our expectations, when they just went through, major layoffs. So this anti-white video game Journo is running damage control for all of these titles, and of course saying that our criticism that's being levied towards them is a targeted hate campaign, which isn't true at all whatsoever. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.